And, looking at all those challenges, I mean, we have Laurie here, who's a broker in this whole entire, who's on the ground on everything. I mean, what challenges are you seeing in all this? I mean, I'm sure you're seeing similar things, but if you can shed light on that.
Sure, yes. So with the pandemic going on right now, we definitely are feeling a lot of challenges from the marketplace. The first thing was basically the current transactions that we were working on started to feel stress. The buyers were concerned about continuing through on escrows that they might have opened. And in some cases where the buyers had already waived their contingencies and their money was non-refundable, they may have tried to see if there was a way to wiggle in a discount on the price. They just think that there should be a COVID discount, or ask for more time to get the deal closed. And there was some talk at points in certain transactions where the buyers might have threatened the seller with litigation, saying that this is a pandemic reason, that it's not the buyer's fault, that the buyer should either be able to get out of the contract or be able to modify it somehow. And the seller is having to try to defend that. So fortunately, on some of the transactions I worked on, the seller was able to give the buyer more time to get the deal closed because the buyer said they lost their lender. They had to go find another lender. There was one where the buyer did have some non-refundable money up, but just said to the seller, look, because of X, Y, Z now, we think we need a discount on the price. And across the board, I think at CB, when we've talked to all of our brokers, we're seeing that if there is a price discount, it's been very minimal so far, where sellers have actually agreed to give something. Where they've asked for a tremendous amount of money off, I've seen one buyer ask for almost a third of the price off. The sellers just said that's ridiculous, and and that transaction fell through. We've also had another transaction that was in due diligence, and the buyer was using money from a sale of another property, and that buyer got spooked because of COVID. So that spooked our buyer to buy our property, and that transaction fell out. But what's interesting is that on that one, the seller was motivated to get it sold. So we put the property back on the market right away. And without going into a whole lot of detail, it was a vacant apartment building that had just been vacated because the buyer had requested the seller empty it out before the close of escrow. And so the seller had finished emptying it out. It was in great shape. And we put it back on the market, figuring during the pandemic, people could still tour it. They could do it on their own. And I was really surprised. We released it to the market in the first week of April with a due date of April 30th. So right in the heart of like the worst time of the pandemic. And it was amazing that we had a lot of activity. Within the first 2 weeks, there were 156 investors that had entered the data room to check out more information about the property. And by April 30th, we received 24 offers on that asset. And that was, I mean, in normal non-pandemic times, we wouldn't have seen that kind of activity. So my thought was maybe what happened out there is that because a lot of people pulled their properties off the market, the ones that were on the market that were well located got a lot more attention than they normally would have. And pricing actually came in stronger than where we were pre-COVID. And so I thought, so it was almost counterintuitive of what you might think during a pandemic that you could experience. But maybe that was an aberration, I'm not sure. However, we are now talking with some of our very seasoned sellers who are saying that they want to get to the market now with properties because there seemed to be some optimism with the world, I think, settling into how this COVID is going to play out. And I think the state's starting to open up. So they're thinking that now would be a good time to take property to the market, and we're getting ready to launch some properties that we've held back on launching.
Wow, that's great insight. Very counterintuitive to the nature of this marketplace. As you guys see the civil unrest that's happening, that's great insight, Laurie. Thank you.